Welcome to the Eventful Podcast, where real conversations meet big ideas.
This is where the real journey gets shared.
It's honest,
It's inspiring.
and it's always eventful. Today's guest is someone incredibly special to me, not just because of the work that she does, but because she's my sister. Amber Lempke is the owner of Primrose School of Yorktown, where she leads with heart, vision, and a deep commitment to giving young children the strongest possible start in life. Her background is in human capital management and driving efficiency in large organizations. She's a female veteran and has worked in both the federal government and private sector for almost 2 decades before venturing into early childhood education and opening her own school this year. Amber is also a devoted Enneagram enthusiast, always exploring what motivates people and how we can better understand ourselves and each other. On this episode of the Eventful Podcast, I am so excited to welcome Amber Lempke, my oldest sister. I have several sisters, but Amber was the first, the original. She is the oldest in our family. And I am very honored to have her here today. And this is the first time that Meredith is meeting Amber. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Amber, a little bit about you. You are a former chief people officer who left the corporate world to pursue your dream of opening an early childhood education center. Amber brings a practical, real-world perspective to how people actually operate inside organizations and relationships. This episode, which we're thrilled about, is going to explore how self-awareness shapes decision-making, communication, and partnership, and how tools like the Enneagram can help uncover the motivations behind human behavior. So we are very excited to have you here. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be here. You have invited me to speak about a topic that I nerd out on quite a bit. In fact, my children give me a really hard time about how much I talk about the Enneagram in our house. So to be invited to speak on that has just, I was really excited to be here and to be on your podcast and to meet you, Meredith. So thank you.
First for everything. I love it.
Absolutely.
Meredith, let's start with how you got exposed to the Enneagram. We learned a lot about ourselves through the Enneagram. So Meredith, I know that was sort of your first exposure to it, but I had known about it through my sister, who this is her hobby and her passion, and she has taken many courses and is very knowledgeable on it, but maybe we start there.
So I had a coach, Jessie DeLoe, that actually made me take the Enneagram before we had our business coach. And it was really insightful for me. And then when Jess and I got a joint business coach, which we've talked a little bit about, Nathan, on our other calls, it was really interesting to see how we're very different, our Enneagrams, and how we work together. Additionally, Jess was mentioning my sister is also a coach, and she was on a previous podcast, and she said we could have a whole episode just about Enneagrams that would last 8 hours long.
You could.
Or maybe
There's many layers, many
Yeah.
layers.
So
In fact, I was trying to pick and choose from like, what do we absolutely need to cover today? And what are some things that it would just take way too long to explain? So
Well, when that happened, when Meredith and I took our tests for our business coach before he would even start with us, she's a serial founder, Exeter, and he specializes in co-founder coaching and relationships. And so when he sent us the Enneagram test, that was actually the first time that I had taken a real certified test. However, Amber, I want to give you a second to go through your career, which is fascinating. My oldest sister is a boss, by the way. She won't say that about herself, but very inspiring. One of the smartest people that I know. So Amber, tell us about yourself and sort of how you got to where you are now.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Jess. I appreciate the accolades. And Meredith, well, we'll get into our Enneagram, but I think we share the same Enneagram number. So that's exciting for me. I started my career as an officer in the United States Navy. So I graduated from a liberal arts school, had no idea what I wanted to do with an economics and international studies degree. With a little influence from our father, decided that I would just go do that for 5 years. And I ended up as a supply corps officer, but attached to the Navy's nuclear program in Washington, D.C., where I ended up working for about a decade. And I started in the finance budgeting type world there, decided I did not like that at all. And at one point in my career, our 4-star admiral, who was the director of the program, came to me and told me that he needed me to go down and run human resources. And I had no idea anything about human resources. I didn't know it. But when you're an officer, you just say, yes, sir, and you go figure it out, which, by the way, 3s are very good at. So I ended up in the human resources field. I had pursued a master's degree from George Washington University in legislative affairs, thinking I might work on the Hill at some point. That did not manifest, but I'm really glad it didn't, because I really actually enjoyed getting into the HR field. And so went and got a second master's degree in human resources management and worked for the federal government for almost 18 years. I worked in 5 different federal agencies, so got to see the insides of major organizations, what worked well, what didn't work well. You get to know different types of leaders, and you find out the type of leader you want to be and the type of leader you don't want to be. And after doing that for close to 2 decades, we relocated to where we are now in coastal Virginia, and I moved over to work in the private sector for a defense contractor as their chief people officer. And that, I will say, any organization you're in, whether it's federal government, whether it's the private sector, whether it's a big corporate job or a small woman-owned business, whatever that looks like, the struggles you have and the challenges you have managing people do not change. They are the same ones wherever you are, if you are in a position of leadership and management. And that's something I found useful when I was transitioning over to that part of my career. And then about 3 years ago, decided that I really wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to establish roots in our community here, and I really wanted to provide something to the community that was desperately needed, and that was childcare. So just 90 days ago, literally January 20th of this year, we opened up Primrose School of Yorktown. And so that's what I'm doing today. I get to go to school every day. I get to see little children, and I get to lead a staff of 30, mostly young women, and providing childcare for the Hampton Roads area. Really excited.
So exciting. And I'm so proud of her. She's now
Thanks,
a business
Jess.
owner. A big shift. However, I know this has been your dream to do something of this nature for, I guess, almost the past 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's finally happening and it's come to fruition. And I want to get into at some point how you're carrying over what you learned in your past roles
For
and your
sure.
time as a chief people officer into doing something so much different. But probably, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, the struggles are still the same. Meredith and I have a much bigger team now than we had even just a year ago. And
How big is your team? How many do you have now,
we're
Jess?
soon to be 10.
Wow. No.
So Meredith and I now have sort of diversified our business into, we each have our own team now, which has been a really interesting transition over the past few
Wow.
months.
Yeah.
So that's new for us, but I have so much that I want to talk to you about.
Well, let me just say real quick before we
Yeah.
jump into questions.
Yeah.
So you don't know this, or maybe you do. I hope I've said this to you, but I just want to say it publicly. I remember when Jess called me several years ago, said, I think I'm going to quit my job. I think I'm just going to start my own business. I know I could do what we're doing now, but we're just going to scale it and yada, yada, yada. And I remember, I physically remember being on the back porch of my house in Alexandria and being like, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you going to do about health insurance? Are you going to have a 401k? How are you going to take care of yourself? I was mortified for her. I was so scared. And she was just like, I'm just going to go do it. And you talk about me always having this dream and wanting to venture out, but it's scary. So let me just say that you had a big, I will say, role in inspiring me to venture out and be my own boss and do all of that. I so admire you so much.
Thanks,
from that
Amber.
perspective.
Well, you've seen me from day one, literally. That means a lot. And I probably called you and told you that before Meredith and I got laid off. So once that happens and we got laid off the same day at our previous company that we were working internally for. And that was sort of the push that it took to do what we're doing now. That was about 7 years ago, and things happen in mysterious ways. And
they do. They absolutely do.
An adventure ever since that day. So It's going really well. We're very proud of what we've built. And also, Amber, I know that I have called you on occasion, especially with our first few hires for your HR advice.
What is an offer? What do you put in an offer letter? I still remember that call.
That was before ChatGPT. Like, how do I write an offer letter? What do I do? So you've been
Yep,
helpful as well. So I really appreciate that.
I'm glad.
Over the years, we've planned more than 1,000 events around the world, which means we've spent a lot of time inside incredible hotel properties. From remote ranches to historic estates to urban icons, we've seen firsthand what makes a venue truly work for groups. In each episode of this season, we're highlighting one property that we love or that has seriously impressed us. Our property spotlight today is Faena Miami Beach. Bold architecture, immersive design, and an unmistakable sense of place define this iconic brand. It's perfect for experiential programs that want to feel artistic, unexpected, and deeply memorable.
So, Amber, I have a question for you. How did you first get interested in understanding how people operate?
That's a very broad question. I think I touched on this a little bit before. Like I have always been fascinated by sort of these interpersonal dynamics. And for me specifically, and especially from a military background, how leaders lead and how they do that successfully. I have also been a part of when there was that whole push for diversity in the workplace and making sure, that policies bring about equality and how different policies affect other, different types of people in the workplace. And so all that to say, trying to create cultures and environments where people can bring their best selves to work every day. That I saw was the difference between a thriving work environment and an environment where people, you could call it toxic, you could call it a place where people showed up just to get their paycheck, but they were not happy to be there every day. So I think all of this kind of came to a head when I jumped into the HR realm, when I started operating in that field. But like I said, managing people is like the hardest part of any job you take on. So being in a career field that is, I would say, very people centric helps you figure out really how to facilitate those interactions, right? Between people and between leadership and their teams, and trying to create an environment where people can be successful and feel like they belong and that the work they're doing has meaning is sort of at the top of that priority list, I would say. So I hope that answers the question in a roundabout way.
I think it does. So we're going to jump into Enneagrams in a second, but these
Okay.
are a lot of things that I've never even talked to you about, Amber. I want to know, just even for advice for myself and Meredith and anyone managing anyone out there, specifically in a small business that's scaling, what are some takeaways that you could tell us about growing a team and managing people? I know that's also a broad question, but I just want to know, like, you just started your own business,
Yeah,
and sort of what have you taken along the way? I know you just hired a slew of people as well.
Yep.
And like, what translates from being a chief people officer and just learning how to lead people over many years and becoming an expert at it to opening a new business to scaling and running a small business?
Yep. So I would say when you're in a role like the two of you are right now, or even like I am right now, where you have an organization where you have a personal relationship with everybody on that team, it's small enough that you can do that. Using a tool like the Enneagram to get to know yourself and to get to know your team, to get to know how you take in information and process information, and then to understand how you meet the world and what your default mechanism is for showing up every day in the workplace. And then what your struggles are, and how, if you know yourself and you know some of the things that can creep up and aren't healthy behaviors, right? Then that self-understanding can really help you, one, to be an effective leader and to try to demonstrate, I would say, that the healthy behaviors associated with your number in the workplace, but it also helps you know the other people that work for you. And so understanding those relationships, understanding how the people that work for you process, how they like to communicate, how they like to be tasked. Do they want every step in the process? Do they want to be prescribed that? Is that level of information important to them? Or is it important for them to just have the end result and you say, go get there however you find it best and how you work most effective to get there. Really understanding the needs of your employees, I would say, and how they communicate is very effective. And to me, that's probably the biggest takeaway. Now, when the higher you go up on the ladder and the bigger your organization becomes, the more you lose touch with everyone, right? When I was the chief human capital officer at the US Census Bureau, I had a team of 200 employees and we were servicing a workforce of 14,000 people. And that was going to grow exponentially to try and prepare for the 2020 census, right? So there was no way I knew the names of everyone. I could look at my org chart, but I had 5 senior managers that worked for me. And so at that point, that's teaching your management team how to lead. That's making sure that they're effectively, I would say, learning different tools, different processes on how to be an effective leader. So your job is to be, the coach to those people and to make sure that they're leading well. Because if they lead well, then A, you look better, right? Your team functions better. Your business looks great to the outside world if all of those, wheels are in motion and it's a well-oiled machine. But it also leads to things like employee retention, right? It leads to a great culture where people want to work there and they stay there. So you lower costs, you lower costs of turnover, you lower costs of things like EEO complaints or conflicts in the workplace where you have to go get legal advice. All of those things, I would say, lower as you become a more effective leader and manager. And I think relationships are key to that.
How did you first get introduced to Enneagrams?
Well, back when I lived in Northern Virginia, I had a lot of time commuting, as anyone that has lived in the DC area can tell you. So I read a lot of books and I listened to a lot of podcasts. So yay, podcasts. Probably before they were cool, right? But I listened to quite a few of them on the regular. And one day I forget exactly who it was. I know it was a woman who did a regular podcast and she was interviewing someone about the Enneagram. And I was like, what is that? Because I'd heard of Myers-Briggs, I'd heard of Strength Finders, I'd heard of the DISC, right? These are all personality type tools that are in the workplace and are very prevalent and people make a lot of money off of utilizing those, right? But this Enneagram, so then I went and Googled or, looked up, all right, where are there podcasts specifically on the Enneagram? And so I found one. I started at the very beginning and I listened to the first one, which described every number 1 through 9. So there's 9 different numbers in the Enneagram. And so I went home that night and I was sitting with my husband in the living room after we put the kids to bed. And I was like, you have to listen to this. I said, you have to listen to these descriptions. So I played mine first and he was like nodding his head. And then I played what I thought was his and he was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is so accurate. It's so, and I told him what numbers I thought our children were. And at the time, I think my son Parker was like 6 or 7 years old. And I played the description of an Enneagram 7 and it was him to a T. So to me, when I started hearing this and it was so applicable to my own like personal life and my immediate family dynamics, thought something's good here. Like this can be used and I want to know more. So from there, I just started kind of diving in. But really, that was probably 2018, 2019. And then when COVID hit, we had a lot of time on our hands. And that's when I really started reading. I ordered books. I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to Suzanne Stabile, who is known as the Enneagram Godmother. She is fantastic. And I don't fangirl over a lot of people, but this older woman in her 70s who knows so much about the Enneagram, I actually got to meet her one time and I was like speechless. And so
I love it. I love it.
So I would say that when I discovered the Enneagram and when I could start applying it to personal relationships. So I'll just give you an example, like within my own family, and we can get into the numbers in a minute, but there are 3 different stances in the Enneagram. There are 3 stances that are in the assertive or independent stance. There are 3 numbers that are in the dependent stance, and there are 3 numbers that are in the withdrawing stance. When I recognized that myself, my husband, and my son were all in that assertive stance, that independent stance, where we demonstrate aggressive behaviors, we are very future oriented, we draw our energy from interacting with others and pushing our agenda and achieving things. And then I thought about my daughter who was in the withdrawing stance. She's a 4, and they do not like to move against others. They look inward for answers. They like a lot of solitude. They're very creative. And so her perspective and her outlook and the way that she communicates is very different than the three other people in her immediate family. I thought, wow, like that says something. And that changed how my husband and I parent both of our children, knowing their Enneagram types. It's changed my marriage and how I view my husband's reactions to things. Because I know that's not him, that's his type and that's his default, right? And so you never use the Enneagram as I would say, as an excuse for unhealthy behaviors, but it gives you compassion for people because you can separate them from the behavior. And so being able to translate that into the workplace, being able to say, I understand that, this number that works for me is a verbal processor. So every time she comes into my office, she's got to talk through every certain scenario. And then seeing her colleague who is not that at all, just wants to go get stuff done, like quit talking about everything. Then you understand, right? You know that she's one number and the other one's a different number. And it really helps kind of bridge that gap into why certain people, certain types have different needs for communicating, for processing, for reacting to the world, and being able as a leader to facilitate success for each person based on their perspective and how they see the world.
And Amber, since your discovery of Enneagrams and since you realized that this was your sort of hobby and passion outside of everything else that you're doing, so you told me about Enneagrams back when you got really into them, but I had never taken an official test until we had our business coach ask us to take one. With having a business partner, it is a professional relationship, but it's also a personal relationship. Meredith and I often on our podcast and elsewhere, we compare it to a marriage because it really is like a joining of livelihoods, of making decisions, managing people together.
Right.
Meredith and I are similar in some ways, but we're very different in a lot of ways. And so through that test, I discovered that I'm an 8 Enneagram. I discovered that Meredith's a 3.
Yep.
And it was very insightful. So I'm interested to know what you learned about yourself and maybe me and our relationship as business partners through understanding what our types are. Did you have any discoveries through that?
Many. Well, so like I said, I had actually taken the Enneagram probably about a year before. So I knew what my number was, but it kind of just sat there for me. And I didn't really implement it into our relationship just because she hadn't taken hers. And I just was like, okay, now I know I'm a 3, right? But then when she took hers and we started to work together on it, I really, it opened my mind a lot with, I know you were kind of talking about it before, Amber, but it makes you have empathy and it also makes you realize the way you think about things, it doesn't mean that that's always the right way. There's no right or wrong way to think about anything, right? Or the way that you work or the way that you communicate. It's just different. And so my sister is also really into Enneagrams. I believe she's a 2. Don't quote me on that. But our relationship to understanding hers, and she actually has helped me a lot with going deeper into it. But for sure with Jess, I know 8s are quite different than myself. We have some overlap. You can obviously speak to it much more, Amber, but they decide on things really quick. My brain doesn't work that way. I need to think about something. So I think that helped Jess understand me more and I understand her. And it's, once again, there's no right or wrong. I can give an example, and this is not a bad thing. I admire it in many ways. It's just not how my brain works, but Jess will have a scenario and immediately decide on it. She'll be like, so what do you think? And I'm like, I haven't even thought about it yet because it literally it just hit my brain, right? And I process it and I need to like talk it out more. It's just understanding it and then not getting defensive about it. Now I know when she asks me that, or she doesn't even do it that much anymore because I think she knows my number and how I need time to process it. But it's helped us a lot and vice versa as well. She doesn't need an hour to think through something and talk through it. And I have to respect that boundary too. It's definitely helped us, I think.
Yeah. One of the things you'll hear a lot from the Enneagram, and they call it the wisdom of the Enneagram, is that there are 9 different ways of seeing the world. And so you develop your number at an early age. I think it's around like elementary school. And you could do a whole podcast on how that works. So I won't dive into that because that gets very like into childhood and things that may have happened. But your number doesn't change. It doesn't. So one of the misconceptions is like, oh, either I see myself in multiple numbers. Well, you have lines to other numbers, and you can take on traits of other numbers, but you have your number, and that's your number for life. And you can't change how you see the world. How you see the world is not going to change from an Enneagram perspective, but you can change what you do with how you see the world. And so that's the wisdom that comes from the Enneagram, is changing what you do with that perspective and understanding other people's perspectives as well, for sure. For sure. So
Amber, what is your husband Michael's number again?
so he's an 8. So
Okay, so you
we
have your
you
number
guys
and your
yes,
marriage, Meredith
yes.
and
So our dynamic is the same. Yes, yes. One, I have met very few 3s, so I am really
I.
excited to meet another 3.
Okay.
And then 2, I was like, "Oh, I could speak to this all day. Maybe I shouldn't." But I've been married to an
Yeah.
8 for over 20 years now, so I
I'm
have a
sorry
good
about that.
idea of how they operate. Don't be sorry.
I'm kidding.
8s rule the world. 8s are amazing. And Jess, I think it's interesting too. I think when we first started talking about the Enneagram, you thought you were a 7, or I
Yeah.
thought you were a 7. And to come around and find that you're an 8, now that I know more about it, and I think you do too, I thought that tracks. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I know the types can't change, but I do I think I'm which Amber, you think I'm an 8 wing 7. I also think that's what my test said.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think when I was in my 20s and I was very adventurous and time waits for no man, I'm just going to travel the world and do whatever I want kind of thing. I think I moved much more into my 8 characteristics with starting and running a business and also just maturing into
Yeah,
my
for
30s.
sure.
So I think it's been a little bit free flowing, and I think I've just
Yeah,
gotten more into my 8-ness while I've
sure.
been much more mature. But I would love to selfishly just hear about your dynamic with Michael, my
Yeah.
brother-in-law. He is an 8 and has my number, and you are a 3 and have Meredith's number. And Meredith and I aren't actually married, but what are some things that you learned about him that
Yeah.
applied to your relationship with him?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will just say, one of the things that I love about Michael are all the things about his 8-ness, right? I was very attracted to that. So, and I've gotten questions before like, oh, if I'm this number, should I marry? Like, what number would I be most compatible with? Just to nip that myth in the bud, there's no number that's better than any number, and there's no number that you're more compatible with. It's really, there are healthy behaviors associated with each number. We call that being integrated. And there are very unhealthy behaviors associated with each number. So if 2 people are in a relationship and you're both in your numbers and you're both displaying those healthy behaviors, you're in integration, that's when, that relationship works very well. And then knowing those unhealthy behaviors and being able to take accountability for yourself and to call other people, your partner out on that, I would say that's another, wisdom tidbit from the Enneagram. But to get back to your question, Jess, Michael's a type 8. A type 8 is the challenger, right? They are bold. They're very protective. They're a decisive leader. And the things that they value are strength, autonomy, and directness. 8s very much like to stay in control, and they avoid vulnerability at all costs, right? And so
Yeah.
they make very fast decisions. You said this, Meredith. That's very accurate. 8s also, and this is one of the greatest things about 8s, is they will protect their team like a mama bear. They will stand up for what's right. If you cross them, I will just say betrayal to an Enneagram 8 is like you're dead to them. That's it.
Yeah.
If you are crossed off their list, you're off that list forever. Developing trust back with them is almost an impossibility. So that's really something to know about 8s. And then they can really come across as very intense or intimidating. So that's something that they really have to check themselves on. And they can absolutely bulldoze in a situation instead of collaborate if they're stressed. So that's another sort of, I would say, like blind spot. As far as a 3 goes, a 3 is the achiever, right? So Meredith, we're very results driven. We're very image aware. We'd love to set goals, but we also really like to motivate others. Our motivation is different from an 8, right? Whereas an 8's motivation is really to stay in control and avoid vulnerability. A 3's core motivation is to succeed and be admired. And when I first read that about myself, I was like, that's terrible. Like, why is that my motivation? But as I've come to know the Enneagram, that's not a bad thing. Your core motivation is what it is. So, but our strengths then, right, are really focusing on high performance, forward momentum, Meredith, you and I can walk in a room. We can read that room very well. We're very relationship driven. We know who's who. We know who needs what. We can pick up on people's energy, and we can adjust, right, ourselves to really interact with different people. But one of the things that threes, if we're talking about blind spots for a three, right, you can really focus or over focus on productivity and trying to seek that external validation and really try to overmanage your image. And so they say that threes are one of the most tired numbers on the Enneagram. Like, we don't stop ever and we can exhaust ourselves. And so as far as dynamics go, either between partners or in a marriage or what have you, really understanding those different things about one another. There have been times when Michael's like, you need to set down your phone, you need to close your computer, you need to go rest, you really need to recharge your battery. He keeps me accountable for that. And when we're having conversations sometimes, and I've had like a terrible day, eights want to fix everything. They want to jump in with a solution. And sometimes I'll say to him, I just need you to feel with me right now. I just need you to listen. I don't need a resolution or a solution to this. I just need you to listen, and I need you to feel it with me. And that's something that eights can do, but you have to ask for that, right? It's not their default. They want to go in and fix whatever's wrong.
First of all, Meredith, does this sound familiar? What'd you say? Like, I'm just, I would say, venture to say, obsessed with efficiency and not wasting time and making every second count, every meeting, every hour impactful in some way. And so I also think that we've talked with Nathan about this too, very gut driven, and I lead with my gut. And I think, have not always made the best decisions in my life. Definitely made some mistakes, just like every human along the way. However, I feel like I've honed my gut and my intuition, and that leads me to very quick, like, I know in my body, I can feel sort of what the right decision is and can't help it. It's just, I lean one way or another. However, I also always value Meredith's opinion. We don't make decisions without talking to each other about our business. And so learning about her through our coaching and through the Enneagram, it's one of the most valuable things that I think has come from the coaching that we've done over the past year, because I was always confused by Meredith's pause. She needs to think through something, or she wants to talk something out with me. And it was always kind of this thing like, why are we talking about it? Let's just do it. And she's heard me say that before. I really don't want to talk. We just need to make a decision. Like, let's just make it. Like, we could talk about it all day. Let's just make a decision. And I know that's not how most people operate. And maybe it's not the wisest to be that way. I've learned from her, let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk through the different scenarios and land on an answer that makes sense instead of just being, I don't want to say I'm reactive, but I just like being quick. And it's just very different from how she operates. And so, and I'm also not feelings based. I'm very like, I think, head or brain based, not that there's one better way, or, sometimes being feelings based is really important, especially when leading a team. And sometimes I can be, especially in a professional setting, but possibly also in a personal setting. Amber, you've known me for much longer than anyone personally outside of our family, but I can be not based in my feelings. Why are we talking about feelings? Let's just move.
Right. So, Jess, that's a really, really important thing that you bring up. With the Enneagram, there's three different what we call centers of intelligence, right? There's the gut, there's the head, and there's the heart. So there are three numbers that lead with doing with that gut, right? That's their default. There are three numbers that lead with feeling, and then there are three numbers that lead with thinking. So your center of intelligence is really central to your core motivation, right? It is what you use first or most to drive your daily decisions, and it fuels your emotions. So eights, nines, and ones are all doing dominant. They're in that gut triad. Twos, threes, and fours, they employ feeling first. Now, what's interesting about threes, there are three numbers that are on the primary type, and they will use their dominant center. So you'll use feeling to take in information, but threes, and it's the same respect for sixes and nines on the Enneagram, they don't necessarily trust that center. And so they shift to their preferred center. So what makes you and Meredith such like a dynamic duo as leaders of an organization is that Meredith will take in information with feeling, but then she will shift to her preferred center, and then she will do. And so threes, eights, and ones are all considered like the motors of an organization. They go get things done. And then the last of those three centers is the thinking triad. And those are 5, 6s, and 7s. They want to think about things. They employ logic. And when you understand that about somebody, it really helps you. It's helped me parent a 7, right? Like and it's really interesting when he's 15 now, but when he was in preschool and moving into elementary school, every year you would get a form saying, what would you like the teachers for the next grade that he's going into for them to know about your child? And this is before I even knew the Enneagram. I said, if you ask Parker to do anything, you have to explain the why behind it. You have to give him logic as to why you want him to do a certain thing. If he gets it, even if he doesn't understand, he'll go do it. But if you say like, it's because I said so, or because that's the rule, not cool with him at all. He's not going to do something just because you tell him to do it. He needs the why behind it. So again, that gets back to understanding what fuels decision-making, what fuels your actions as a person. And then even in the workplace, it's really helpful to know those things about yourself.
We spend a lot of time on this show talking about what actually makes events work, how strategy, leadership, and momentum come together in real life. That's exactly why we built Prospect 365, our partnership model for teams producing multiple events each year who want a strategic partner, not just a vendor. We stay close to your events calendar and your marketing goals, giving you consistent expertise, predictable support, and a team that truly feels like an extension of yours. If that sounds like the kind of support that your team has been looking for, you can learn more at prospectevents.com/prospect365. Amber, I know you have your hands full and just started a business. I know you've done some speaking on this and you're so knowledgeable about it. Have you ever thought about, with your HR background and leadership backgrounds, going into coaching and doing Enneagram coaching? Does that even exist? Is that something you thought about doing?
It absolutely exists. Suzanne Stabile's daughter, her name is Joey Stabile Shuey. I know it's a great name. She just wrote a book that came out in March, and I would actually encourage anyone to read it. When Working Together Doesn't Work, I think is the name of it. And I could not put it down. And it is really, really effective because it tells you as a 3 leader, Meredith, what you should focus on and what you should be careful about. And then it also gives you, if you're managing a 3, the things that you should do and not do. And I have found that super, super helpful. It just came out in March. It's brand new. I know that doesn't answer your question, Jessica, but
no, it does.
I think I really do enjoy. I did executive coaching for almost a year between when I left the corporate world and when I was trying to get ready to open the childcare facility. I started my own consulting firm. And so I actually had a contract with a government agency, and I did executive coaching for GS 15s prior to the Trump administration and all the Doge that came in. And so that was a whole nother ball of wax that I got to help them along with. But I will say, the Enneagram, I think, is useful in any corporate setting, in any place where there's relationships. It's very, very useful. And I don't know, maybe one day we'll see.
Do you make your employees at your school take the Enneagram so you know how to guess, or you can immediately tell? You become so good, you know exactly what they are.
So it depends. To answer your question, no, I don't make them take it because I use it and I think through that lens constantly. It comes up. And so I have talked to, especially my leadership team right now, about it. And yes, working side by side with anybody in any capacity, once you know the numbers, you can kind of guess what they are. And so all of my teachers know I don't know what all of them are right now. Maybe at some point in the future.
I mean, I would, in my perfect world, Amber, I would have you come in to our company. All of our employees take a test. And then you have a quick session with each of them to let them know what type Meredith and I are, how to best communicate with us. And then the reverse of letting us know what type each person is and how
that
to
would be fascinating.
Communicate with them, because I actually think it's helped my relationship with Meredith so much.
It really does. And it really helps you explain coworkers to one another. So that's something I've been really able to do, especially with opening this new business. I have an employee who's an 8 and I have an employee who's a 1. And a 1 on the Enneagram is a perfectionist, right? they want everything to be correct. They want everything to be right. They are those verbal processors that have to talk and talk to really process things. They walk into any situation or any room and they see everything that's wrong with it and they try to fix it. And so to me, like I really value that because Enneagram 3s like efficiency too, but they like it for different reasons than Enneagram 8s do. And Enneagram 3s will cut corners and Enneagram 1s hate that. That drives them absolutely nuts when an Enneagram 3 will be like, oh, that's good enough. I don't care. Do however you want to. Just get to the end, right? And so the other thing to understand about Enneagram 1s, though, is that you may think they're the biggest critic in the room and that they are always pointing out what you're doing wrong or in this case, oh, that's a violation of licensing. You can't do that. I actually value that. I'm like, please tell me all the things that I need to fix, please. But their biggest critic is of themselves every day. Enneagram 1s are different from any other number because they have an interior dialogue with themselves constantly about what they're doing wrong, how they're messing up, what they should be doing better. And so to me, I can't even imagine waking up in the morning and having that voice just constantly in your head. And so I have so much compassion for someone that has that every day, but I also see the value that they bring. When you understand things like that, that really helps you to, like you said, Jess, have empathy and compassion for that person, but also like really pull out their value, right? You know what they're good at, you know what tasks to give them as an Enneagram 1, and you're able to go do that. I also have an Enneagram 9. 9s are the peacemaker. They're in that withdrawing stance. 9s hate conflict. They hate it. They don't want to be a part of it. 9s will meld with everybody else. They kind of don't even know what their own opinion is. 9s are those friends or those colleagues where if you're like, where do you want to go to dinner tonight? And Jessica will be like, I want to go here because I want this food or I want that, or we're not going there because I hate that place. They know exactly what they want and how they want it. 9s, they're like, wherever anybody wants. I just going along to get along. I just want to be there for the meal. I just want to like everyone to have a good time. But when you're in meetings and you think about having folks in that aggressive stance, like an 8, or you have a 1 who has to verbal process and is talking through all of your decisions, and you have a 9 who doesn't say a word. And so being a boss and knowing those numbers and really being intentional about looking at that 9 and saying every Enneagram has a childhood message that they need to hear. And for the 9, it's your voice matters. Your opinion matters. And we joke with one of my 9 friends all the time, like when we're trying to like, where do you want to go to eat? And I'll look at her and I'll go, your voice matters. And we laugh because we all know the Enneagram and we talk about it a lot. But in the workplace, translating that and saying, hey, I want to hear what this 9, I won't say her name, but has to say, because they have really valuable input, but they can be completely shrouded by the stronger types in the room. And so giving them space, right, to be able to do that is really important.
So fascinating because I feel like, of course, Amber, this has shed a light for you in your life for everybody who you know personally and professionally, but also people who you know well, whether it's your partner, whether it's your family or your children, like you said, siblings, whatever it is, but just even friends professionally, it just helps you understand what makes people tick and why they do the things that they do. Because even in my relationship with Meredith, we've known each other and worked together for maybe over a decade now. I am somebody who likes to understand why something is happening or why somebody needs to do something a certain way. And so this is so valuable to inform that. But Mary, I think we should make all of our employees take the test. What do you think?
I definitely think so. I'll tell you guys a really funny story before we ask Amber her last question. But I went on a date probably about a year ago when I first started dating again. I sat down. We were talking maybe for 30 minutes. He said, are you an Enneagram 3? Which is my Enneagrams. And I said, this is creepy that you can read exactly what Enneagram I am. But he knew immediately. We didn't go on a second date, by the way. So maybe that's Enneagram. But I just thought that was crazy. Like it was 30 minutes in and he knew exactly what it was. So I think.
And the key thing to know about Enneagram 2 and how it's different from any other test that they might take is that's really key is that you focus on the motivations, not the behavior. So many of these other tests and systems, they really focus on behaviors. You can have the same behavior on a multitude of numbers, but the reason they're behaving that way is completely different. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that sets the Enneagram apart for sure. So.
I want to talk to you for another hour about this.
There's so much to cover. There really is.
We did not even get to half of our questions, but for every guest that we have on the Eventful
Yep.
podcast, we ask, what was an eventful moment in your life, whether it's personal or professional, that shaped how you think about people, leadership, and how you operate today? So we'd love to know what that is for you,
Yeah.
Amber.
So I was gonna give you two, but one of them I've already given you. So Jess, one of those eventful moments was watching you start your own business and just
Aw.
step out in complete confidence, and thrive. A really cool thing about eights is that like they're and threes too. You both share that really high level of confidence and like I can't fail. I'm gonna just go do this thing. You learn from your mistakes, but so that just on a personal note was I would say very eventful for me. Just watching you just thrive over the last decade.
Thank you.
But the other thing for me is just I guess more in the present is really starting this new private preschool and finding that one of my passions, and it's taken me a long time to figure out what is my passion, what is my purpose in life. And as much as I thought it was going to be like, oh, shaping the future of tomorrow, that's really not it. That's a great outcome from opening up a childcare facility. But for me, it is seeing young women come into these roles, many of them like in their 20s, like I'm almost or could be old enough to be their mother. And just seeing them thrive and ask for guidance and being able to provide that for them. So one of the things, and it is a trait of an Enneagram 3, Meredith, and I don't know if you find this in your work as well, but you love seeing other people succeed. And so specifically around this, I had a young woman come to me and she's had multiple different jobs, doesn't have a degree, and she goes after about a month of working with toddlers no less. You want to talk about an exhausting job working with 12 toddlers for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Those are superheroes in my world. But she's like, I really like this. I think I have found what I want to do with my life is to teach young children. And to me, like that made my heart soar to hear that and to be a part of that. So yeah, that's been eventful for me over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months.
Because I'm in Georgia, where Amber and I are from right now, and recording this from our dad's house. But
Yeah.
I was just telling our parents the other day how much I admire you, and I am absolutely astounded by what you've done. And I know since your niece and your daughter and firstborn, I mean, since she was a toddler, you've been interested in pursuing this, which is so different from what you've been doing in your career, which I think
Sure.
is so interesting and admirable. And I am floored by, because starting a business is hard enough. Meredith and I know
Sure.
that better than anyone. Running and scaling a business is even tougher. It's like you start the business and then and it grows, which is amazing, but you
Right.
have to figure out all of that. However, we started a business in a vertical and sector that we're experts in. And of course, we learned along the way. We had been doing this for such a long time before we started our
Yeah.
business. However,
Sure.
this is a new foray in a departure from your previous career. There are things that, the thread together between the two, and you've learned so much from managing people. However, you just did it and you started it, and it's so exciting, and I'm so proud of you. And I
Oh,
admire you
thanks,
so much,
Jess.
because opening an early childhood education center, I don't know if I could do that. I wouldn't even know where to
It's
start.
not for the faint of heart. And I have learned so much in 90 days, but I will end with this nugget. A great leader that I worked for one time said, surround yourself with people that have greater expertise than you do and lay out a path to watch them thrive. And that has always served me well.
Well, I
When
love
you
that.
hire people that know more or are better at the job than you are doing, or have those strengths, and you can really empower them, it's easy. I mean, not easy all the time, but it certainly allows you to do the things that you're good at when you have people that have that expertise. Those leaders that get very intimidated or insecure, they don't want the people that work for them to be better at their job than they are. Those are the ones that struggle, because they're trying to do everything, and they're
Yeah.
trying to keep all the plates in the air and balance all the balls and all the things. And really, I've told my team at this school from day one. My goal is to get to a point where I don't ever need to come in the office, really. Like, you guys are managing this school and you're doing it well and all of that. Now, we have a ways to go to get there. And I love being at the school. Don't get me wrong. It is my joy to wake up and go into that building every day. But, the goal is for them to be such experts and such great managers and have the experiences that they have so that they can be successful.
I think Meredith and I could learn a thing or two from that. That should be our goal as well.
There you go.
But
Yep.
thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on. This has been a long
I'm
time
honored.
coming, and it's been so fun. So fun. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're welcome. It was great to chat with you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Eventful Podcast. If you loved this episode, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and catch us on Instagram at the handle @theeventfulpod. See you next week.